Brexit is the problem which every Tory Prime Minister believes that they can solve until they actually start trying to do so. My name is Mike Cashman, the channel is Britannia Waves the Rules. Please subscribe if you enjoy the videos. We have had 4 Tory Prime Ministers over the last decade dealing with Brexit. So I start with David Cameron, there's Theresa May, Boris Johnson and now Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. And each one of them thinks that they have the answer, or has thought that they have the answer to the problem of Brexit. I was at a party the other day and there was a jar of something that we needed to open and the hostess asked for help with this, and person after person said, "Here, let me have a go, I can do that." I did it myself. I said, "Here, give it to me, let me have a go," thinking I'll be able to do that. I couldn't, neither could anybody else. None of us could manage it. But seeing somebody else struggling with a problem leads us to think, I'm sure I could do a better job. And we've seen this with a series of Tory Prime Ministers. Now, I include David Cameron in this because he had no plan for Brexit. Some people criticised him for resigning after the referendum. I'm not massively surprised that he resigned because Brexit by then had been defined in so many contradictory ways, it was impossible to deliver. But what I think he could have done, and this is hindsight, I acknowledge that, what I think he could have done is to have provided the resources of the civil service to the Leave campaigns, who said these people will help you to define the Brexit that you want to offer to the British public, and then that's the one that people would have been voting for. I think it's quite possible in that instance that that specific Brexit would not have been chosen in preference to Remain, but if it had been, it would have stood more chance of being deliverable. We then have Theresa May, and she has been criticised for defining Brexit equals Brexit, which is a fairly meaningless thing to say. Actually, of the 4 Prime Ministers, I think she got more right than some. She did give some thought to her approach to Brexit in the leadership campaign, and moving on from that, if you look at her Lancaster House speech, she'd given considerable thought to the preconditions for negotiating Britain's exit from the European Union. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with what she was doing there by any means. I think that was much too hard a Brexit given the nature of the referendum result, but she had thought about it. I think her massive mistake was to go and negotiate with the European Union without knowing what her own side would accept. That's a fundamental negotiation error. But of the 4, she was arguably better prepared than any of them. She couldn't carry her party with her for the reasons that I've said. And so next we have Boris Johnson. What I would highlight is that he was brought in effect, to deal with the problem that Theresa May hadn't negotiated a Brexit that the Conservative Party would agree with. But in his leadership campaign, he had no answer. He had no solution. Sajid Javid had I think, somewhat immature and uninformed solution, which is for the Northern Ireland Protocol that Britain would pay for all the technology needed at the border. Sorry, this was before the Northern Ireland Protocol, but for the challenge of the Northern Ireland border. Now, I think that shows a misunderstanding of the nature of logistics and public-private partnerships and lots of other things. But at least he'd had a go. Boris Johnson had no answer. He had the attitude that if the EU won't give us what we want, then we'll be prepared to walk away for no deal. But he didn't actually know what Britain wanted. After the leadership election, when he was Prime Minister, Angela Merkel at one point attempted to say, look, over the course of the next month, let's move towards a deal. And as far as I could see at the time, very little progress was made in that time. It was only after a kind of all-nighter before the summit that they finally, as I've said before, fished out of the wastepaper basket an already discarded deal, uncrumpled it, distressed it a bit further and called it a triumph of negotiation. But Boris Johnson went into the leadership election unprepared, with no answers for Brexit, and that showed eventually in his desperation to do any deal at all that he could claim was a move forward. And in 2022, we are stuck with all the problems that were evident in his deal of 2019, which many of us pointed out at the time, in social media and in the press and so on. So, 3 years later, it's 2022, Brexit has not succeeded, a problem that Tory ministers would prefer not to talk about, or would prefer to talk bollocks about if they're going to say anything about it. So here we have Sunak and Truss in the leadership debate. And what are they saying about Brexit? Well, amongst other things, they're saying that it hasn't caused the traffic queues at Dover, which would not be there but for Brexit. So we have two people proposing themselves as Prime Minister who do not understand the problem, but think they can solve it. We have been here before. This will not be the answer, but a better answer is to rejoin the EU, or to seek to do so. And if you believe that too, come and join us on the National Rejoin March, London, 10th of September. And if you're not sure, come on the march, come to Parliament Square, hear the speakers, and make your own mind up. I'm Mike Cashman. This is Britannia Waves the Rules. Thank you.